Hello and welcome back to my channel, and today we're gonna talk a little bit about overclocking. We're gonna do a little bit of benchmarking as well, and this video is just pretty much in a response to majority of the comments under my videos when it comes to CPU bottleneck and why I'm running things stock, considering I have the i5-96K, one of the supposedly the gaming champions of the 9th gen from Intel. And the thing is, I kinda choose not to overclock my system because I am limited by the hardware I actually have. And this is, I think, something people don't exactly realize when they say just overclock, bro. You know, the gains are amazing and stuff like this, because it is a bit more complicated than that. This topic is kind of requires a little bit of a know-how. And end of the day, to be fair, all of this overclocking is highly dependent on your budget that you're willing to invest, how you actually choose and build your first build or second or third, depending if you gonna overclock, how you put parts well forward, so to say, future-proofing yourself. And I know that I'm gonna get a lot of shit about this video because a lot of people, honestly, a majority of the people think that overclocking is just, you go into nowadays motherboard, you select AI overclock, and it just magically gives you the best of both worlds. Now, see, the problem is if you have top of the line or medium high range board, it might actually work out, but in truth, this is not exactly as easy. So here's the thing. Yes, I am running an i5-96K, and as a stock 6-core, 6-thread CPU, it's actually pretty decent. As you know, I'm playing my games and I'm benchmarking them in 4K. And in some games there might be a little bit of a bottleneck, but we're gonna get back to that. So currently what we have, this CPU is a little bit weird. We started a base of 3.7 GHz, and we do have a single core boost clock for 4.6. So natively this CPU does not boost all cores to the same frequency, it only boosts 1 out of 6. So essentially the other 5 cores are kind of doing whatever they want, but they're not they're not reaching the max turbo frequency. So what I've actually gone and done, I did overclock it a little bit up to my system's capabilities, and what I've running now is 4.8 GHz on all 6 cores, and that's as far as I can push my current rig. And when people usually say, oh, but 96K, it easily reaches 5 GHz, sometimes, you know, with a better silicon lottery, you can get 5.1, even 5.2, stuff like this. Right, so here's the thing. You might be right, but I'm running an Asus Prime Z3070P. This is the budget board from Asus, okay? So in reality, this board is capable of overclocking. It is meant for the 9th gen CPUs, but it is definitely not the best choice for overclocking, specifically if you're pushing very high frequencies on a CPU. Not only this board is not exactly top of the line, the quality of the board is kind of questionable when it comes to it. For decent overclocks, obviously, as you know, you should be getting at least a Z390 or thereabouts, and this is only about Intel's 9th gen CPUs. 97K, 99KF, 99K. That's it. If you're stepping into the 10th gen, well, essentially you need a new board because there's a different socket. So when it comes to my rig, I have this board. So it's from a get-go, this is not the best thing for overclocking. Second of all, this is my current CPU cooler, which is a Hyper 212 Evo. This cooler is rated for max TDP of 150 watts. The CPU itself, the 96K, is rated at 95 watts TDP. And this is the second thing. I'm air-cooled. I don't have all-in-one, I'm not liquid-cooled. And that's only that much I can push before I start hitting a thermal throttle. Of course, I can disable this protection to an extent within the BIOS and, you know, hoping it all goes well. But the fact itself is, I simply might be cooking my CPU a bit too much, because this cooler cannot sufficiently cool it down. And this is what, again, a little bit of misinformation I would want to say when people talk about these things, because as a rule of thumb, I call it the magic triangle. or the trinity of overclocking, what you need to have the best results and the best performance out of your overclock. First of all, you need a decent motherboard, which got dedicated VRM, which is the voltage regulating modules. These modules are in charge of literally supplying voltage to the components specifically for CPU, and you can go into little tiny details when you start adjusting the voltage, the V-core, or if you go for anything else power-wise. You need a board that not only is able to, well, supply voltage, but is actually designed for overclock. So obviously mid-high range MSIs and so forth, they actually have the VRM cooling. The backplates are different, you know, the board is slightly different itself, and I'm not even going to go into the fact what kind of RAMs you need or the RAM overclocks, so it actually works better instead of actually the RAM is slowing down your actual CPU overclock. I'm not going to go into all that jazz, right? Because we can talk about that a very long time. Second thing people don't understand, you need a decent cooler, because the more voltage you're going to put into the CPU, unless you're going to undervolt, if you're getting more, well, gigahertz per money, so to say, you're going to generate much more heat, and you need something to take that heat away from the CPU. So you need to have a decent or above decent cooler. Running on air obviously is possible. Multiple brands out there. Noctua, for instance, they have amazing air cools. Well, actually CPU coolers, so to say, call it as you want. You know what I'm talking about. So, but essentially all-in-ones, dedicated liquid coolers will always be the best, because they're rated for far more TDP than the CPU will be churning out. So I know the Kraken actually is rated at 250 TDP. So everything within or above obviously need to upgrade, but you know, you have like 220 mil radiator fans and so on and so forth. You can go wild with that. That's a whole different story. And number 3, you need a good power supply. And the thing is, the power supply needs to be up to par to actually give the voltage stability to the board and to the CPU, because if you overclock your CPU, your RAM or your GPU, it will draw more power. I'm running my current rig with a 600 watt Corsair, and as you might imagine, running an 4070 Ti, couple SSDs, NVMe, some other things I have connected in, I am not exactly close to the ceiling where I'm running out of the PSU power, because depending on the usage scenario, essentially you kind of care more about the 12 volt rail than anything else in between, because even for that 600 watt, I'm not getting the full 600 watt. But my system is, the way I built it, it's designed to be around 450 up to 480, so I do have a little bit of headroom. However, if I want to overclock my CPU higher than that, I'm already lacking at least 2 out of 3 things. I don't have a decent cooler, and I don't have a board that actually supports that. So, here we are. So what I've done, currently I'm running stable at 4.8 on all cores, and that's what we're going to finally find out. Does having a budget system, because honestly this is a budget system I'm running, okay, this is not top of the line, apart maybe from one component, which is the 4070, can the mild overclock, which going from 3.6 base to 4.6 all cores, mild overclock in my opinion, 4.8 technically, will that improve my performance and my experience in 4K gaming? So for that, we're going to be looking at 4 different games in 4K native, which is going to be Cyberpunk 2077. I believe that is one of the more CPU intensive games when it comes to it. Far Cry 5, I think the only Far Cry that actually wants to use your CPU at all times, and actually the better CPU you have, the more cores, the better it runs. We're going to look at the Tomb Raider, Shadow of Tomb Raider, because it does have built-in benchmark and it does rely on multi-core support. And then we're gonna look at God of War, because that is one of the games I do play sometimes. And the first game, I kind of noticed that my current CPU is not exactly pushing all the data to the GPU to get above or within 60 without playing with the render resolution and so on and so forth. So we're gonna see how it goes. So without further ado, we're gonna jump in. The first segment of these videos will be running stock overclock. And just a disclaimer, since I already running overclock just now, I'm not gonna go stock and record all the games. I'm actually gonna record all these games currently with an overclock, and then I'm gonna go back to stock, and then I'm gonna re-record them again. I do believe that is the only possible way, because if I'm running stock and recording the games, and then even though I know I'm running stable, I've run all the tests, the IDA and the burn-in and whatever, if one of these games crashes for me, then, you know, what's the point? That means I've made a mistake somewhere doing the overclocking steps. So yeah, for now, that's pretty much all there is. Definitely fight me in the comments in regards what you think about budget overclocking and how it works for you, or do you actually think you need top of the line PC to enjoy this overclock? So yeah, let's go and have a look-sees, and this is gonna be a fun one. Let's roll. Right, so here we are, fully stock, which is, well, as stock as my motherboard says, it's stock. Everything's on default apart from XMP profile being on. So yeah, let's just jump in, have a quick look-see. So we're going obviously with a 4K native, no vertical sync, graphically going with the custom. These are going to be the same settings we're going to use for the OC run. Luckily these chosen games are saving the settings, so I don't have to double check everything. And yeah, these are the settings I usually use. We are not going to use DLSS, we're not going to use frame gen. These options are off, including the ray tracing, because, well, it is how it is. You know, ray tracing takes away a huge chunk, and, well, with DLSS probably yes. So let's run a benchmark and have a look-sees. How much and what we actually gonna get. This is gonna be a fun one. I do like these type of videos, you know, when someone throws an idea and I can just kinda see what's going on. But yeah. So the bar scene. $35-ish. Yeah, I wouldn't want to. I don't want to say that the CPU is doing too much in this particular scene. The usage is kind of as expected, really. I wonder, and we are kind of hovering 35-ish to 40-ish. So I think that's a pretty decent baseline, considering it's a native 4K. So we shall see. We shall see how it works out for us. Now, granted, Cyberpunk's been through a lot of patches, and, you know, Nvidia released a driver for the new Phantoms of Liberty, and all that is old news, but still, I don't want to say that it runs bad. You know, for 4K it is taxing, obviously. So what do we have? Average frames are 40-ish, so in all honesty, I'm kind of tempted to put down 35 to 40, because that is roughly the average, really, when it comes to this game. Let's jump into the actual game. I wonder what's gonna happen there. Synthetic benchmarks are good to an extent, but at the same time, it's not exactly the real world experience, so to say. Obviously, doing this is a little bit backward, considering I already know the result, in all honesty, as I explained in the intro. So I know what we're getting. And we're sub 60, Konpeki Plaza. Yeah, I mean, it's playable, I guess, you know, dropping down to 40, but yeah, this game kinda does benefit from 60 frames, in all honesty. And even in this pretty cordoned off area, we're still not hitting 60 frames, so it is how it is. Right, well, wouldn't want to say expected, but at the same time kinda expected. I always play this game with the DLSS, so I wouldn't know I really wouldn't know. Okay, okay, let's move on. Putting it down as 35 to 40ish anyhow, so sub 60. So this is the run with an i5 overclock to 4.8 on all cores, running Cyberpunk. Let's have a look at the settings real quick. I'm going with a custom preset. I've disabled some of the things I don't use while playing this game myself, so obviously we're not gonna use DLSS frame gen. Resolution scaling is off, we don't want to touch that. Ray tracing is disabled. This is a personal preference. If you can see the eye candy for the game, go for it. I don't see the point of stressing out the GPU more than it needs to. And since we're not using DLSS, well, you know, ray tracing will take a huge chunk off. Everything else is pretty much the way I play this game with. No motion blur, no depth of field, no film grain, none of that jazz. No contact shadows because this is severely degrading the performance of the game. And everything else is on high and ultra. That's pretty much all there is. So we're gonna run the benchmark now. MSI is up here. You can see the temperature of my CPU currently, and yeah, we're gonna see how this actually gonna perform. Kind of first time I'm running this test now because I just wanna be surprised. So we're gonna talk about all the numbers later on, so we'll see how this actually works out for us. So yeah, the most intense scene, the bar. So as you can see, 40-ish frames, so 32. I mean, honestly, I'm not surprised. This game in 4K without DLSS is just not exactly playing the ball the way I would want it to, but even with DLSS on auto, and we did this test with a 3060, 2080, even DLSS on balanced or automatic actually works wonders for this game, and I wouldn't say it has diminishing graphical fidelity, but native 4K is how it is. So I would want to say we're kind of 35 to 40-ish frames when it comes to it, and yeah, the CPU is pretty kind of handling it well. I see some cores are engaged a slightly bit more at certain times, and we're about 70-ish degrees, 75. The headroom for my CPU is 100 degrees. I do believe it's going to be on thermal shutdown at 90, so I have a little bit time to do it. So yeah, average FPS is 40. So as you saw, it was fluctuating between 35 and 40. So let's just jump into the game itself. As you know, I don't trust synthetic benchmarks, and I think just having the game itself will be a little bit better. But yeah, wouldn't say much gains so far in comparison to running this game even on stock back in the day, but I might be wrong, you know. I'm used to being wrong sometimes, but I think for a fun experiment this is not too bad, so we're just gonna go with that. So we are in Konpeki Plaza, and yeah, so what do we have? Kinda 40-ish, 50-ish frames. Don't feel any stutters, but the game is kinda running a little bit slow, which is not surprising considering we're sub 60. So yeah, I don't know, you know, it's just one of these things really, end of the day. But yeah, we'll come back to this location. I do like it that it's actually closed off area, so to say, and even in this area we're not hitting 60 frames in 4K native without DLSS, which is not exactly surprising. So yeah, let's move on. Okay, Far Cry 5. Oh, one of the good old games nowadays. Right, 4K native. Nothing out of ordinary. Going with the Ultra preset just for consistency's sake, including HD textures. No vertical sync. Field a few slightly cranked. No dynamic resolution. So I think we should be pretty good to go here. So let's run a benchmark and see where we land here. Yeah, that's gonna be an interesting one. Again, Far Cry 5, and probably I'm gonna be repeating myself all over the the rest of the different videos coming up. Because I will be repeating myself on overclock as well when I talk about the game. I'm kind of new to doing the same thing twice but backwards. But yeah, this game has never given me any issues whatsoever. It always just ran fine. So yeah, at the current moment we're getting 90 to 100. That's 105. We're not dropping below 95 though. That's kind of interesting, but okay. Okay. So what do we have? Minimum 95, average 105. Frames rendered. All looks good. Okay, let's jump into the actual game itself. Take it for a spin. Honestly, this is the performance I'm kind of expecting from this game on this CPU with the GPU. I don't know. It technically is CPU intensive game, at least if I can believe the internet. But I don't know. Ever since I went from 1080 to 3070, it was absolutely fine. Yeah, absolutely glorious. No issues here. So we are at about 96, 97, 100. So we're way above 60 anyhow, so I don't know. A little bit of a core load there. Let's blow some stuff up. Looks fine. I don't know. Runs fine. Runs exactly as Far Cry usually does. I don't know. Maybe I should have picked Far Cry 6 for that. But in all honesty, I would want to say that Far Cry 5 is still just a better game overall. I know I'm gonna probably raise some hell with this statement, but that's just my opinion. That's how I feel when it comes to Far Cry's. But yeah, 100. Haven't seen us dipping below 90. Oh, 87, 85. Spoke too soon. Okay, so I think we're safe to say, even while playing. Come on, move. While playing, with all what's happening around, kinda 85-ish, I would want to say, is the lowest we've gotten in real game. So I'm putting us down for 85 to kinda want to go 110, give or take. So yeah, that's gonna be interesting. I believe that overclock might give us maybe slightly better minimum FPS, so we might not be at 85, we might be just slightly higher up as a minimum value for it, but that remains to be seen. So yeah, still playable as hell. I mean, honestly, what's not exactly surprised about it though. Oh well, yeah, let's rock and roll further. So here we are in Far Cry 5, a game that runs absolutely fine usually. Obviously we're going with an overclock now. So let's double check what we're running here with. Going full screen, native, 4K. We're going with the ultra presets all around, including HD textures. And vertical sync is off. No frame rate limit. Field of view is slightly cranked. And no dynamic resolution. Resolution scale is at 1, so just native 4K. So let's run a benchmark and see how this goes. Because again, we're just doing science here. Now I wouldn't say that Far Cry 5 is a demanding title, but apparently it is CPU intensive at some degree. So what do we see now? Well, it's actually pretty decent, 100 frames for now. Of course we're dipping down. But yeah, I've played this game so much in co-op, in single. Probably my favorite go pass some time game there is. Don't really have to worry about too many things. Unless you're getting hijacked by Faith or by Jacob. But yeah, so far, kind of okayish, honestly. CPU is not really cooking itself. Still pretty much the same 70-ish threshold, so that makes a happy face. Let's see what the average frame rate is gonna be for us. So far, apparently, we're not dropping below 92, so good for Ubisoft's given built-in benchmark tools. I think the best thing ever since all their Assassin's Creed with this. So yeah, what we have minimum is 92, average is 104. So yeah, 92 to 104. I'm just noting it down really for myself, just for the recap. So let's just quickly jump into the game itself and see how it goes for us. Yeah, they can join. Friends will join. I want to see that happen. Everyone's got so many friends to join their party always, right? Okay. So we need to go and reach the father's compound, which we're not gonna do. Just walk around really. So yeah, CPU usage is slightly higher. Probably, you know, feeding a bit more data to the GPU, which is not surprising at any point, to be fair. But yeah, to be fair, this game, I don't know, this game is not the one that where you need to have 200 frames at all times to enjoy this. Probably will help if you have it, but overall, I don't know. $88-ish. Let's throw that grenade here. A little bit of a frame dip, but yeah, I mean, the game runs absolutely fine. So I'm still putting it down for about 92 to 104. And yeah, since we're not dipping below 90-ish, I would say that's a fair assumption for this particular run with this particular clock speed on the CPU. So let's move on to a little bit more demanding titles. So let's rock and roll. Oh, Shadow of the Tomb Raider, one of the most popular titles for benchmarking. So yeah, we're going with the DirectX 12, 4K native, no DLSS, full screen, no fidelity CAS, no vertical sync. And for graphics, we're going with custom, because I don't want ray tracing for shadows. So obviously ray tracing is up to you guys. If you want to use it, go for it. But we're gonna roll with 8x anisotropic filtering and HBO plus and pure hair on normal. Obviously this is not a Witcher 3 where NVIDIA Hairworks demolishes your CPU, but we'll see how it is. Let's run the benchmark and get the approximation how well this game runs. This game is supposedly CPU intensive based on the amount of NPCs, but certain areas are, I would want to say, more GPU bound than CPU bound, but we'll see. We'll have a look-sees. We're starting strong at 87 frames here, 88. Okay, it's not too bad. For 4K native, pretty decent. Now the games are running off from NVMe drive, so I'm expecting a pretty decent performance to begin with. 86. It was still above 60, I mean, literally. CPU is doing something, going up to high 80% of usage. All cores engaged. Good life, good stuff. I don't know, so I guess there's more than sees the eye really when it comes to these system performance really, because most of the times I would want to say it's kind of down to the drivers, give or take. But if someone told me that, hey, you'll be playing Shadow of Tomb Raider in 4K cranked settings, I would probably call him a madman, because back in the day this game was so hard to run. Like, it was hard to run in full HD, and people got into 2K. Then now we have 4K, and it's just like above 60 frames, and it's like, could do better, you know. Need more frames. It's always like this. But yeah, so far we're kinda... The lowest was about 85-ish, I think. We'll see what the average is for this game. I think we're gonna take the game's benchmark average and just go from there, because obviously in some areas you will dip or have a frame drop here and there, the 1% lows or the minimum frame, but wouldn't want to say I ever remembered having huge issues with Tomb Raider. None of them really. Now the remaster is out, or the 1 to 3 OG Tomb Raider is out, so might actually have a look at that eventually, but obviously that was PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2 times, I think. Might be wrong, but don't think you even need a GPU for that game. Here comes the heavy scene with the market. Let's see where we drop here. 90, 89, 85. So kinda 85 is the lowest point for us now. So it's not too bad, 95, yeah. Let's see, this is the end for this benchmark, I believe, for Tomb Raider. Once we go past these people, I'm kinda looking, I think we're gonna be averaging about 94 probably, give or take, but we'll see. Place your bets. Average FPS 97. Okay, you know what? I'll take the average, because the minimum was about 85. The lowest point 85, and obviously with the scenery opening up it was. And I do love this game. It shows the graph of how quickly the things are talking to each other. So CPU game 5, CPU render 4. Kinda, yeah, we are a little bit apart. And yeah, in here it clearly shows, so the frame time between the GPU and CPU. So GPU takes 10 seconds, CPU takes 4, so there is a little bit of a bottleneck here. So a component is waiting on another component here. 6.2, 7.2. Yeah, we kind of want to be on a higher bracket here, so where the data is being transferred and processed at the same time or close to the same time. So yeah, I think this little weird dip, not sure which scene that was, but yeah, the CPU is not exactly catching up to the GPU demand. At least if I'm reading the graph right. But yeah, we'll see. Let's jump into the actual game. And has a look-see about a real-life performance. So far I don't actually see any issues, you know, in terms of no stuttering, nothing. Everything's pretty smooth. Okay, let's get out. And we are at 80, 87-ish. I mean, this is absolutely fine. Apart from me making Lara to jump down somewhere. We're not falling below 85 for now, at least. Actually, the game is very snappy and... oh dear. If this game came out and you show them this benchmark, they would be like, what? Impossible. But yeah, we're pulling 8.8 gigs of VRAM, 10 gigs of RAM, 90-ish frames. I mean, I don't know what else what else you want here. I mean, for real. This looks pretty damn well. Yeah, well, putting it down at like, give or take, I would want to say 97 as an average, with the low at 85, so yeah, that's it. Here we are in Shadow of the Tomb Raider, probably one of the most CPU intensive games out there. It's been used for benchmarks for as long as I can remember, and honestly there's a good reason for it. So we're cranking this game out as well usually, so we're going with the DirectX 12, which is the recommended API. Obviously, you know my feelings about DirectX 12, but then again, just for the sake of argument, we are maxing this game out just to see what happens. 4K native, no DLSS, obviously no dynamic resolution or anything like that. Yeah, resolution is 100%, we're not using any fidelity CAS, vertical sync is off, and for the graphics we're going with a custom. So the reason it's custom, obviously I have disabled some of the things I don't like, but we're still going to use 8 times anisotropic filtering. I'm not going to use ray tracing for it, and yeah, HBO Plus will be fine. So again, including pure hair as well, but I don't think this is going to change too much things, all things considered. The game runs and looks amazing even with these settings. So let's run a benchmark and see how much we're going to be getting here, because again, I haven't run these benchmarks with overclock yet, so I'm a little bit curious myself how it's going to go. And as you can see, like, it's very hard to tell the difference when it comes, unless you have MSI running in a background. But yeah, so what do we have here? Absolutely fine, all cores engaged, 90-ish frames. I mean, I don't know, maybe there will be bigger difference if I was pushing it to 5 GHz and I would have the means to do it, but then again, you know, this is just for the numbers sake. Clearly you can optimize the game, and you know, there's a lot of things you can do so that it runs better, but at least these games are stable, in my opinion, as a franchise, so to say. You know, Far Cry 5 is absolutely flawless in my opinion. Tomb Raider has been used for benchmarks on multiple systems, so of course some will say you should have done Warzone instead, but I don't know. That's for the multiplayer people. For single player, I think this is decent enough. And same thing, so 90-ish frames while recording native 4K. I think it's a pretty good result when you look at it. So yeah, CPU is actually kind of in a 60 degrees, which is interesting. All cores engaged, nothing out of ordinary, which makes a happy face, to be fair. So yeah, let's just wait until this particular run finishes, but I already think it's gonna be fine. I'm kind of willing to mark it down for about 92 frames as a baseline, because we're not dropping below it, and being slightly above, that's a different thing, because depending on the scene intensity, what's on the screen, and so on and so forth. So more populated areas, more NPCs, more CPU work required. This is just pure graphical backdrop in my opinion, hence we can see actually 130 frames as well, which once we go closer to Lara and you know all the model textures and shaders is gonna take off a chunk. So I think it's gonna be the market scene here, if I'm not mistaken. It's gonna be the cherry on top. But yeah, so far I don't know. CPU usage is slightly higher than I remember, but I think that's a good thing. Maybe I just need more cores really. So we're dropping slightly below 90 here. Still above 60, so you know, I'll take it. Let's see what we're gonna get. But yeah, so far it actually looks good. Like, you know, I guess the question is, what is your expectation of the frame rate really? Like, do you want to see constant 60? You want to see constant 100? But then again, for 4K, majority of the work is offloaded to the GPU. Just some games that are CPU bound, I guess, more intense. That's a different story altogether. So let's see what the benchmark tells us. And the average FPS is 96, so let's mark it down as an average 96. You know, I was kind of going for 92, but hey, who am I to judge? And even in these graphs you can see, so you know, CPU time and CPU render. So Well, we're a little bit out of sync here, like 5.3, 5.4, 4.2. There is a little bit of waiting on things to come through. Like GPU is waiting 10 to 4, for instance, yeah, 9 to 4. Things are waiting on each other. GPU is waiting on a CPU despite this. We kind of want to be in this bracket here, 10 and 10, because that's the milliseconds between the components. But yeah, once you have 10 and 4, this is where you start waiting for stuff to come through. So anyhow, outside of this, let's just jump into the hidden city. No idea where that about is. If it's cordoned off area, we're probably gonna be fine anyway. Been a while since I played this game, to be fair, so I'm not too fussed about it, but hey. New base camp. So yeah, 90-ish. CPU is literally chilling at like 40%, give or take. Still not cooking itself, surprisingly 55 degrees. So yeah, I mean, absolutely playable. I mean, I have no issues with this whatsoever. Come over when you have time. I don't. Let's take a stroll outside. Okay, so real world 85-ish frames, pretty much kind of in between. So the benchmark told us average is 96. In reality, as you can see, I guess it's correct when it goes for the lowest and the highest and pulls the average, but even right now it was like 75 I saw. So I don't know, everything is... This is playable. I mean, I played this game with 1080 Ti on medium in 2K, so in comparison to that, this is way more playable than before. Alright, just getting some tan here. But yeah, anyhow. Let's go for the next one. So, good old God of War. I must say one of the graphically impressive games in my opinion. Let's have a look at the settings. So we're going borderless 4K, the resolution 4K. No vertical sync, no triple buffering, no FPS limit. Render scale 100%, no DLSS and no FSR. And graphically we're going with the Ultra preset. I do believe that reflection-wise you can go higher than Ultra. I think you can go Ultra Plus, but depends really on your reflection hunting. Certain areas might actually be a bit more better for it, but I don't know. Let's jump in, see where this takes us. That's gonna be a fun one. To be fair, yeah, this game is still one of my favorites. So, where are we? We are at kinda 70-ish for now. Game is running fine, looking fine. CPU usage is a little bit all over the place. Obviously this is a new game plus, so
here's this way. I can see more tracks.
Just gonna
Well, we can follow you.
walk around, crack some chests, see where we are. Dropping as low as 70. I think we 69, 68. Okay. Let's just walk around a little bit. I'm not sure. I think I actually might have dealt with an enemies before we came here. Yeah, no one here. Yeah, frame-wise we are kinda up and down a bit, but 68. I mean, this is absolutely playable. Like, I finished the whole game with these frames and it was absolutely fine. There's no stutters, no hiccups, nothing. So I'm kind of... Since this game does not have a built-in benchmark, I'm kind of left to just figure out on myself. So at this point I would want to say we're kind of going for 68 as a low. I think haven't seen really above 77 at times, but we're more about 76, 75 range, depending on the scene. So it's more like high 70s, give or take. I would want to say that this feels like high 70s.
Boy, you missed these.
Huh. Close. But also not deer. See? Tips are too wide. Mountains up?
Your mother taught you well.
Yeah.
I mean, you could argue that this game requires more than 60 frames, you know, like above 60. And I do believe in some combat situations, you know, when you're fighting the Drog or you're going against a troll, there's a lot of stuff. It might dip slightly below. But then again, I guess it's depending on your preference if you use FSR or DLSS, because I've been playing and streaming this game with DLSS on. And honestly never had an issue, hence I never thought that I need something more than I currently have, but yeah, the game is absolutely fine running on stock. I mean, hell. Brings back good memories. Throwing the axe, never gonna get old. Like literally, this is just so nice. It actually leaves a mark when you throw it into the rock. All these effects as well. So yeah, I'm marking this down as the low as 68, and we're roughly around 75 for now. So yeah, let's wrap this up. So one of the good games, God of War, obviously. Border, no buffering, no FPS limit, no DLSS, no FSR, render scale 100%. And graphically, we're going with Ultra preset. You could technically crank up reflections to Ultra, but then again, not too many places use that, so I'm going to off because this is the Ultra preset and more consistency's sake. So yeah, let's just jump in, see what the frame rate is going to be. I did play around with this because I forgot how to throw the axe, so I had to kind of learn, because that's my favorite part of God of War, throwing the axe and recalling it. So what do we have here? Looking absolutely fantastic on Ultra. CPU usage has gone up significantly, I'm not surprised. And we're still above 60 frames, so we're kind of would want to say low 80-ish. Oh, this never gets old. I think we can just go somewhere here.
Should
I
we
think
be
actually
here?
I've been here before. I don't remember this chest. Probably the runes are somewhere nearby, but yeah, I'm gonna try to look at the frames more than anything else really here. And yeah, we're pretty much like hovering around 70-ish.
Here's this way. Or we can follow you.
75, 76.
Mind the edge, boy.
Mind the edge. So yeah, I mean, again, I played this game with DLSS, so without DLSS 72 I think is a pretty fair assumption. 72 to 75, marking it down, so slightly dropping 69. But yeah, I mean, then again, we're pulling 9 gigs of video memory allocated, 14 of RAM. Now this axe throwing will never get old in my book. I just like all this. I should really get all these lost toys back. But oh well. I never actually done them before. I watched someone's video and he was just picking them all up and I was like, well, how does that happen? But yeah, okay, this place is not open yet for us. Okay, fair enough. So yeah, 72 to 75. 66, 67. Well, still haven't seen us dropping below 60, which I think is already a good sign, give or take. But then again, this game, in my opinion, is pretty well optimized for its... I wouldn't want to say for its age, but ever since it came out, actually never had any issues. No major patching was required, so I don't know. Just my 2 cents in regards to this. Yeah, absolutely playable. Might have a little bit more or less frames if there was some combat, but I think we accidentally dealt with all the enemies on our way here. So it is how it is. But yeah. Let's wrap this up. Right, so I must say pretty interesting results. I don't want to say that I kinda semi-expected it, but here we are. So running stock speeds, Cyberpunk 2077 4K with the settings are pretty much in between 35 and 40. Konpeki Plaza we were not able to hit 60 frames. We're kind of above 50-ish, and that's a very contained area, should I say. So, you know, not even much happening there. Some reflections, and we actually were running with the ray tracing off, so kind of expected for 4K. Cyberpunk is a little bit taxing. Far Cry 5, 85 to 110 on stock, pretty much your average Far Cry 5 experience in 4K. To be fair, way above 60 frames, and that game is absolutely fine as well. Tomb Raider, low 85, as low as we dropped, and benchmark average was around 97 frames, at least if we can trust the synthetic stuff. God of War, since there's no benchmark, we're pretty much hovering below 68 and 75 with slight peaks up or down, but I didn't actually see us going below 68 really. So for 4K Ultra, no DLSS FSR, I think that's absolutely fine for God of War. Now when it comes to the overclock to the 4.8, as you can see, the difference is very minimal. For Cyberpunk we were still literally the same ballpark, 35 to 40, so that kind of indicates you just need a beefier GPU, or you have to resort to either lower settings or maybe DLSS or FSR. Far Cry 5 we did have slightly higher minimum FPS, so we didn't really drop below 92, so that's about 7 FPS gain, give or take, in comparison to stock. And it was about 104 plus at some degree, so yeah, that apparently did change something. But in all honesty, Far Cry 5, I wouldn't want to say this is the reason you have to overclock. Like, this is just game itself. it is running the Dunia engine, so I guess it is a gain, supposedly. Tomb Raider, lowest we saw was 89 frames in comparison to 85 with stock, so that's about 4 frames gain. And average, surprisingly enough, was 96 using the synthetic benchmark, while the stock speeds actually gave us 97. But then again, this is the error margin on synthetic benchmarks. Probably if I was running it at least 2 or 3 times with overclock, we would be probably 97 or even 98. But yeah, in terms of the minimum FPS, you're getting slightly higher, about 4 to 7 apparently. And God of War pretty much didn't really dip below 72 as the minimum, and we're still in the same ballpark, 72 to 75 on average. So what did we gain, if anything? So despite all my limitations for the hardware, cooling and everything like that, we did gain, give or take, I would want to say 4 and 7, that's what, 11 frames in total maybe. On very select titles I would want to actually average that out, so we gained about 5 frames. So yeah, the lowest frame rate will be slightly higher, will be probably a bit more stable, but overall I would say it might actually make a difference for this CPU to run at 5 GHz, as some people do the benchmarks with 5, 5.0, 5.1, in comparison when you look at the benchmarks for 97K or 99K. But yeah, if I wanted to squeeze out something extra for going from stock to 4.8, as you can see guys, there's very little to be gained. In all honesty, obviously, since we were recording in 4K as well, I did notice that in some games, specifically God of War, once I stopped the recording, the frame rate skyrocketed, I would want to say. We actually went all the way up to 80-ish, but you know, obviously what is not recorded doesn't count. So as I always said, if you're recording, if you're streaming, that's gonna be the penalty you're gonna get. But yeah, we're back to stock, and I don't know, maybe in the future we'll play around this a bit more, but I'm not exactly planning on changing my motherboard or changing my CPU cooler just so I can overclock 6 years old CPU, really. You know, end of the day, that's just the reality of things. For 5 to 6 frames in select titles, considering I'm playing or benchmarking everything that's coming out with everything being stock, well, knowing my limitations, I think it's a little bit stupid to try to achieve 5 more frames that I'm gonna lose recording anyway. So I don't know, take this with a bucket of salt. I'm not against overclocking. I do believe that if done properly with hardware that actually supports it, and you can tweak and squeeze out that extra free money performance, it probably is worth it. But with my current setup and this particular little mild overclock, as I call it, because 4.8 is relatively mild for 96K, then yeah, that achieves absolutely nothing in my opinion. But it's just my opinion, guys. Anyhow, I hope you gained something. I know the intro was a little bit long, but it's just, again, when it comes to overclock, more than one variable is in play. So if you're planning to overclock, you have to plan accordingly. If you just get stuff and then you try to overclock, you will eventually run into an issue, which obviously I hope you're never gonna run into issues, but it is just, you know, nature of the beast. Anyhow, that's all I have for you guys today. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Over and out.